Hey, before we get started, take a second to like the video and subscribe if you want more weird, mildly horrifying historical bedtime stories. It helps keep this channel alive. And if you're already lying down, half asleep, do me one favor. Drop a comment below with what time it is where you are and where you're listening from. I always love seeing people tuning in from all over the world at 2:17 a.m. when their brains suddenly decided, you know what sounds relaxing? Learning about magic that involves putting nails in a bottle of pee. Anyway, let's get you settled. Turn off the lights. Fluff your pillow. Maybe crack a window unless you live somewhere with bugs the size of small birds. Let the background hum of your room start to melt into nothing. You don't need to check your phone again. It's not going anywhere. Close your eyes if you want, or just stare at the ceiling like you're waiting for your soul to reboot. Now take a deep breath, because tonight you're going somewhere you absolutely wouldn't last a day. Welcome to early America, a place full of superstitions, home remedies, whispered charms, and beliefs that make modern conspiracy theories look like polite suggestions. This isn't Salem. Not yet. It's before that. Before iPhones, before indoor plumbing, before your great-great-great-grandma's grandma had teeth. And even though we'll dip into Puritan New England eventually, we're starting in the dirt. The real dirt. The one you wake up in. Congratulations. It's 1724. You live in the American colonies. And someone just looked at you a little funny, so obviously, they're cursed. You don't have a doctor, a therapist, a pharmacist, or Google. But don't worry. You do have a neighbor who swears she can cure fever by tying a frog to your foot. You also have a Bible, a pewter spoon, and a bag of teeth you're not allowed to ask questions about. Perfect. The good news? You're not dead yet. The bad news? That probably means your liver is haunted. Let's begin. You wake up in a one-room wooden house that leaks when it rains and creaks when you breathe. The fire burned out hours ago, so the air is cold and damp and smells like wet ash, sour wool, and something that might be mold, or might be a dead mouse under the floorboards. Either way, it's not your biggest problem. You pull yourself upright from a straw mattress that's poking you with whatever passed for feathers, hay, and good intentions back when it was made. Your blanket is made of coarse wool. It's stiff with dirt and smells faintly like the inside of a shoe. You haven't washed it in months, not because you're lazy, but because laundry is a full-day event involving a kettle, boiling water, ash soap, and fingers you're not willing to lose to frostbite in January. You're already itchy, because yes, your bed has fleas. And yes, so does your cousin. You can hear him scratching from the other side of the room. Your cousin has lived with you ever since his house burned down in a chimney fire last year, which was, frankly, not that unusual. Chimney fires are the colonial version of forgetting to save your work and watching your laptop burst into flames. There's no bathroom. There's a chamber pot. It's half full. You ignore it, because you'd rather go outside. So you pull on your only shirt, your second worst pair of socks, and your shoes, which are basically two pieces of leather stitched together by someone who definitely failed their cobbler apprenticeship. You step outside. The sky is gray. It's always gray. It's morning, but not like a fresh sunrise kind of morning. More like a get up and hope nothing bites you morning. The air is damp and smells like wood smoke, manure, and wet leaves. Your breath fogs in front of your face. You walk behind the house and do your business in the bushes, looking over your shoulder because you know how this works. One wrong move, and your neighbor's going to say you gave her the eye. and suddenly she's brewing onion tea and sticking pins in a rag doll that looks suspiciously like you. Back inside, it's time for breakfast, which is generous, because what you're actually eating is a bowl of cornmeal mush. Again, it's bland, lumpy, and still somehow burnt. The pot it came from has been hanging over the fire for a week. You just keep adding more water and more cornmeal and praying it doesn't grow teeth. You chew slowly, very slowly, because your teeth hurt. All of them. Colonial dentistry is just another word for suffer quietly. You might have a cavity, or scurvy, or something worse. Doesn't matter. There's no fixing it. The only real cure is whiskey and denial, or possibly having the tooth yanked out by someone who sharpens knives for a living. You rinse your mouth with lukewarm beer. Everyone drinks beer, even kids. Why? Because the water will kill you faster. No one says it out loud, but everyone knows. The stream runs behind the village. Upstream, someone dumped a dead pig in it 2 weeks ago. But it's fine. Just don't think about it. You grab your coat, your real coat, the one with patches on top of patches, and head out for the day's work, which today means helping the blacksmith, because your cousin owes him money, and you owe your cousin. That's how debt works here. It's like a curse, but more permanent. As you walk through town, you nod politely at everyone, because not making eye contact means you're hiding something. But too much eye contact means you're challenging someone. And if they happen to have a wart or a bad day or a sick goat, they might just say you cursed them. Again, you reach the forge. The blacksmith grunts hello. He smells like iron and sweat and something that might be burnt meat or just his boots. You start stoking the fire. The air gets thick fast. You're sweating through your shirt within 10 minutes. Your eyes sting. You get to hammer some iron into something vaguely horseshoe-shaped, and the blacksmith nods once, which is basically a standing ovation in this time period. But halfway through the morning, something happens. A woman rushes in. Her child's sick. Fever, rashes, crying out in sleep. She thinks someone put a spell on him. The blacksmith doesn't argue. He doesn't say, well, maybe it's just smallpox. He just points at you. Because last week, you accidentally dropped some ashes near the kid's cradle, and the mother says, that's not just clumsy, it's a sign. You are now a suspect in a magical crime you did not commit and cannot defend against. You open your mouth to explain, but you've got no proof. And in early America, proof is whatever 3 neighbors believe after talking about it over cornbread. Welcome to folk magic. Here, diseases don't just come from germs. They come from envy, a sour look, a whispered word, a piece of string tied the wrong way. And curses? Oh, they're real, and they're everywhere. Your neighbor's cow died? Probably cursed. Your sister lost her voice? Must have been a spell. That man down the road who got boils after cheating on his wife? Definitely the devil, or possibly moldy bread. Who can say? People believe in magic not because they're stupid, but because they're desperate. Because medicine doesn't work. Because life is short and painful and confusing. And because when your child's burning with fever and no one knows why, you'll try anything. A charm, a prayer, a buried toad wrapped in twine. Some people think they can cure curses by spitting 3 times and saying the Lord's Prayer backwards. Others carry dried rabbit feet, or wear iron around their necks, or nail a horseshoe to the door and hope it catches bad luck like a fly trap. You've seen someone bury their fingernails under a rock to keep from having nightmares. You've watched someone pour salt in every corner of a room to keep spirits out. You know a guy who sleeps with a Bible on his chest and a knife under his pillow, just in case. Is any of it real? Doesn't matter. It feels real. And that's what counts. Because this isn't a world where you can Google your symptoms or get a prescription. This is a world where you get sick, and then you either get better, or you don't. And if you don't, well, someone probably cursed you. Better find them fast. And that's just the morning. You step outside the forge, face red, lungs full of smoke, and officially cursed. At least according to Martha, who has now crossed herself 6 times and muttered something that includes the words devil and ash breath. You're not even sure what that means, but you know better than to argue. You wipe your hands on your pants. Not that it helps. They've been dirty since October. It's past noon now. The sky hasn't changed. Still gray, still low. Still feels like you're walking through a slightly disappointed sponge. You head home for food. Not lunch, just food. The word lunch implies you have options or variety, or even a time of day when food reliably exists. But you don't. You have today's chance to not faint. You lift the wooden latch and push open the door to your house. The hinges creak like they're haunted. You're not sure they're not. You've never trusted that corner by the hearth. Inside, the room is smoky, because ventilation is a theory. The fire pit smolders in the middle of the room. Above it, a black pot bubbles with what might be stew. Might also be old dishwater. You check. It's pottage. Again, what's in it today? Hard to say. Bits of dried corn, a root that might be parsnip, some wilted greens. You think you spot something that looks like a chunk of dried squirrel jerky, which means someone in the family is either generous or guilty. You sit down on the floor, because there are no chairs, just a few stools, a lopsided bench, and a sense of shared discomfort. You take a wooden spoon and try not to chip a tooth. Across from you, your aunt is tying a red string around your baby cousin's wrist. She says it's for protection. Against what? Spirits, fevers, bad dreams, general misfortune. You nod, because there's no point arguing. If it doesn't work, it wasn't tied tight enough. If it does work, it's proof. That's how all this goes. You finish the stew, scrape the sides of the bowl, and drink what little broth is left. It's hot, vaguely salty, and tastes like someone whispered the idea of meat into the pot 3 days ago. You're not full, but you're not shaking. That's a win. You offer to help your uncle with the root cellar. He says no, which in this household is code for, I don't want to be blamed when it collapses. So instead, you're tasked with something worse. Fetching water. You grab 2 wooden buckets and start walking. It's half a mile to the stream, which doesn't sound like much, until you remember it's muddy, slightly uphill, and you're wearing shoes made from leather, prayers, and stubbornness. The path is uneven. The trees are still bare. The wind picks up. Somewhere nearby a crow caws, and that alone is enough to make you pause, because yes, even the birds mean something. 1 crow? Bad luck. 2 crows? A journey? 3? A death? You glance around. Just 1. Of course. You keep walking. When you reach the stream, it's running fast. Cold and clear. You kneel down, scoop up a handful, sniff it, and try to pretend you don't see the shiny slick of something upstream. Probably just silt. Probably not pig blood. You fill the buckets anyway. As you hoist them up, someone whistles behind you. You jump. It's just Isaac, the apothecary's assistant. He's 12. He carries a basket of dried herbs, a slingshot, and the vague confidence of someone who thinks he's already survived a plague. He nods toward your buckets and says, "You should put some iron nails in those." You blink. "For protection," he adds, like it's obvious. "Keeps the spirits from following you home through the water." You say nothing. You just start walking back. Because he might be wrong. But what if he's not? That's the thing about living here. You know some of this is nonsense, but you still throw salt over your shoulder. You still knock on wood. You still sleep facing the door and keep a sprig of rosemary in your mattress. Because belief doesn't have to be logical. It just has to be enough. You make it home without spilling too much. The water is added to the pot. Some is poured into a basin for washing. Your aunt tosses a pinch of dried sage into it to cleanse the air. The baby sneezes once. Everyone sighs with relief. You sit by the fire, rubbing your hands. And that's when your cousin shows you the bottle. It's small, made of greenish glass, sealed with wax. Inside, nails. Rusty, bent, sharp. A few strands of hair, a piece of cloth. Something dark floating in liquid you don't want to identify. You stare at it. He grins and says, "It's a witch bottle." Of course it is. Witch bottles are homemade magic, folk traps. You bury them under the hearth or near the door, sometimes in the barn. The idea is simple. If someone curses you, their magic goes into the bottle instead. Gets tangled in the nails, drowns in the urine. Yes, urine. That's usually the main ingredient. It's disgusting. It's also common. People here do it all the time. You've seen bottles with hair, blood, bone, salt, even thorns. One man swore by stuffing his with belly button lint. Said it caught the bad humors. Does it work? Maybe. One woman said her leg rash went away the day she buried a witch bottle in her neighbor's garden. Coincidence? Possibly. But no one dug it up to test it. You hand the bottle back to your cousin and nod like this is a perfectly normal conversation. Because it is. Because here, there are two kinds of knowledge. What's written in the Bible, and what's whispered after dark. And most of the time, the whispers are louder. You sit by the fire. Your cousin is still holding the witch bottle like it's a prize chicken. You know better than to ask what's in the liquid. You just nod. Because whether you believe it or not, you live in a world where magic is everywhere. Not the sparkly kind. Not the wand-waving kind. The practical kind. The anxious kind. The kind that comes from too many bad winters and not enough explanations. There's no science class. No Mythbusters. If something works once, you remember it. If something goes wrong, you blame whatever's nearby. A look, a word, a crow, a breeze, a dream, a bowl of milk that sours too fast. And tonight, as the wind picks up outside and the fire crackles a little too loud, you realize something. You're going to have to do the ashes tonight. Ashes are the wood stove equivalent of trash day, but more cursed. See, the hearth is the heart of the home, literally and spiritually. You cook on it. You stay warm by it. You pray near it. So the ashes are complicated. They carry meaning. Bad dreams? Sprinkle ashes at the foot of your bed and check for footprints in the morning. Missing tools? Throw a handful of ashes into the air while saying the thief's name 3 times. Unexplained illness? Someone might have taken your ashes, or worse, buried them under your front step. So when your aunt hands you the ash bucket and says, "Don't spill it on the path," You know what she means. You take the metal pail and step outside. It's darker now. The wind's shifted. It smells like damp leaves and smoke and something old. Something that makes the hairs on your neck stand up. You walk the path to the back fence, keeping your eyes down, because eye contact at night is a gamble, not just with people, with whatever else might be watching. You dump the ashes carefully. No scattering. No sudden gusts. Just a clean, respectful pile. You whisper a quick blessing, even though you don't quite know what it means. Just something your grandfather said when the wind howled too loud. Back inside, you're told to wash up, which, in this case, means dunking your hands into a bowl of water that's been used by 3 other people. It's cloudy and cold and smells faintly of soap root. You dry your hands on your pants because the towel is still damp from yesterday and technically counts more as moist cloth of bacteria than anything else. Then it's time for the evening ritual. No, not prayer. Not dinner either. It's lint and spider check. You scan your bed for bugs. You pat the mattress for mice. You shake out your blanket and hope there's nothing hiding in the folds. Because once, last summer, someone found a small snake curled up near the foot of the bed, and now no one sleeps until they've done the ritual. Once that's done, your cousin does something strange. He takes a piece of iron, an old horseshoe, bent and chipped, and places it under the bed. You glance at him. He shrugs. For spirits, he says. Of course, iron is protective. So are red threads, black cats, onions, salt, and whatever old widow Edna swore by last week. Something about 3 silver buttons and a boiled egg. Everyone's got their favorite. Your family uses iron. You once met a woman who wore garlic around her neck every Tuesday. Only Tuesday. That's when her dreams were the sharp kind. Someone else swears by crossing your knives on the kitchen table after sundown. And yes, some people think you can trap spirits in glass jars if you close the lid fast enough. You've tried that one. Didn't work. But it did get your cousin to stop talking for an hour, so you consider it a success. You lie down on your mattress. It's not comfortable. You're sleeping in your clothes. Your socks are still damp. Your knees hurt. And the pillow is filled with what you suspect is a mix of goose feathers, straw, and disappointment. You pull the blanket up. You stare at the ceiling. There's a spider in the corner. It doesn't move. That's a good sign. If it starts crawling toward you, that's when you worry. You close your eyes, but before you can fall asleep, you hear it. A whisper. Not a voice, not a word, just a sound, like someone sighing near your ear. You sit up. There's no one there. Your cousin's snoring. The fire is low. You don't know what it was. You lie back down and pull the blanket tighter. And tomorrow, you're going to visit the healer. Because something doesn't feel right. And when something doesn't feel right, there's always someone who knows what to do. The next morning, you wake up feeling worse. It's not a sharp pain. It's not even a real symptom. Just that feeling. That something is off feeling. The kind that sits behind your ribs like a little stone. You sit up slowly. You didn't dream last night. Or if you did, you can't remember. You slept cold. You slept light. The fire burned too low, and your feet are numb. You stretch. Something cracks. Your cousin's already gone. The blanket he slept under is still warm, which means he probably left just before dawn, probably to trap rabbits, or meet the cooper's daughter, or bury another bottle of nails behind the barn. Could be any of those, honestly. You chew on a piece of leftover cornbread. It's stale, hard enough to be considered a weapon. You dip it in hot water, pretend it's broth, and try not to think about how long it's been since you had anything with flavor. Then you grab your coat and go. The healer doesn't live in the village proper. She lives up the hill, past the second fence, down the path where the trees get a little too close together and the moss grows too thick on one side. Her name is Mercy. Of course it is. Everyone calls her Aunt Mercy, even though she's not anyone's aunt. She's old, but not hunched over kind of old, more like carved from wood kind of old. She walks with a cane that's also a staff. She wears a bonnet that's always slightly crooked, and she smells like vinegar, dried mint, and secrets. You knock on her door. She doesn't answer, so you wait. Eventually, the door creaks open, and there she is, already looking at you like she knows why you're here. You mumble something about not feeling right. She nods once, turns around, and lets the door swing wider. You follow her inside. Her house is warm and cluttered and filled with the exact kind of things you'd expect. Bundles of herbs hanging from the ceiling, jars of roots and dried berries lining the shelves, a basket of feathers, a shelf of skulls, a string of beads that definitely didn't come from church. She gestures for you to sit, not on a chair, on a stump, because of course. She doesn't ask you what hurts. She just stares at you. Then she lifts your chin, looks in your eyes and hums. Then she starts talking. Not to you. To herself. Sick air, she mutters. Could be envy, could be crossing, could be leftover grief. You don't know what that means. You nod anyway. She takes a small bag from the wall and starts pulling things out. A small wooden disc, a strip of red cloth, a silver coin, a tooth. You don't ask what kind. She tells you to breathe out 3 times. You do. She smells your breath. She frowns. Then she says it. You've been stepped over. You blink. She explains. Someone walked over your shadow the wrong way. Could be a stranger, could be a neighbor, doesn't matter. They crossed you, left a trace. And now your spirit is off balance. This explains everything, apparently. The bad sleep, the weird noises, the general sense that something is watching you from behind the stove. She mixes a pinch of dried something with a drop of something else, ties it in cloth, hands it to you. Keep this on you, she says. Left side, for 3 days, then bury it under a crossroad tree. You nod again. Because what else are you going to do? Ask a doctor? Good luck finding one who doesn't think bleeding is a universal cure. You hand her a coin. She doesn't look at it, just pockets it. Then she says, "One more thing." You pause. Don't talk to the black dog. You stare at her. What dog? She doesn't answer. You thank her, back out of the house, and start walking home. The charm bag feels warm in your hand, smells faintly of mint and ash. You tie it to your belt and try not to think about dogs, or shadows, or what she meant by leftover grief. You make it back to your house by noon. No one else is home. You sit by the fire and stare into the coals. And you wonder, how many people have done this? How many people in your village have charms in their pockets? How many berry bottles, hang horseshoes, burn herbs, and whisper blessings into water before drinking it. Probably more than you think. Because here, medicine isn't always science. It's faith, fear, hope, memory. It's what your grandmother taught your mother who taught you when no one else was listening. You poke the fire. It sparks. Somewhere outside, a dog barks once. You don't turn around. You just sit still and wait for someone to come home. The charm bag stays on your hip. You don't touch it. You don't peek inside. You barely even breathe near it. Because everyone knows you're not supposed to open it. You're not supposed to wonder what's in it. You're supposed to carry it like a secret, like a bruise, like something sacred that you don't quite believe in but also don't dare ignore. You sleep with it on. You bathe with it nearby. You sit by the fire, holding a cup of hot broth, thinking about shadows and dogs, and whether or not your uncle ever paid that traveling preacher who showed up last fall with a wooden cross and an oddly specific sermon about firewood arrangements. It's fine. Everything is fine. But then the cow stops eating. She's old, but not that old. She stands in the pen, eyes dull, head low. She refuses water. She turns away from the grain. She moves like something inside her is sore. Your aunt frowns. Your cousin mutters. Your uncle says it's nothing, but he's already checking under her hooves for nail marks. And that alone tells you everything you need to know. Something's wrong. The next morning, someone draws a sign above the barn door. It's chalk, quick, slanted. Looks like two triangles stacked on each other and a curl at the top. You recognize it. It's a hex sign. Which is funny, because you've only ever heard the preacher say, hex signs are the devil's alphabet. But when a cow won't eat and milk goes sour overnight, suddenly everyone remembers the old rules. The sign isn't for harm. It's for protection. It's meant to confuse bad spirits, keep them out, or trap them in. Either way, the barn feels quieter after it's drawn, like the air inside is holding its breath. You start noticing more signs now. Above the hearth, a braided cord, red and white. Under your bed, a bundle of dried herbs tied with twine. Near the window, a jar of salt with a nail in it. You ask no questions, because questions mean you want answers. And answers mean someone has to say out loud that they believe in these things. And no one ever does that, not directly. They just nod, or say, it's for luck, or it can't hurt. But you know what it really means. This house is protected, because no one trusts the quiet anymore. That night, you wake up sweating. You don't know why. The fire is low. The coals are red. Your mouth is dry. You sit up. You don't see anything. But the air feels wrong. You stand, step outside. Barefoot. The ground is cold. The night is still. And then you see it. Something in the distance. At the edge of the trees. Not moving. Just standing there. You squint. A shape. Low to the ground. Dark. Watching. A dog? Maybe. You blink. It's gone. You turn around, go back inside, and pretend it was a dream. The next morning, you find muddy paw prints near the steps. You don't mention it. You keep your charm bag close. Your cousin starts making protective powder. You know the smell before he even tells you. Crushed eggshells, salt, sage, and a pinch of ash. He sprinkles it around the windows, over the door frame, under the cradle. He says it's an old family recipe. You ask him where he learned it. He shrugs. Just always done it. And that's how most of this works. Not from books, not from spells. Just memory, habit, fear, passed down like a family quilt with burn holes. And it's not just your house. Everyone has their own version. The widow by the mill hangs glass bottles from her porch to trap bad spirits. The weaver in town swears by placing scissors under her pillow. One man refuses to let mirrors face the bed, says it invites sickness. The preacher rolls his eyes at all of them, but even he knocks twice on the church door before walking in alone. Because deep down, everyone knows, this place is not safe by logic alone. You need something else. Faith, fear, magic. Call it what you want, but you keep the signs up. You refresh the chalk, you check the salt. And when the cow finally eats again, when she lifts her head and takes a shaky step toward the trough, no one says anything, but everyone exhales a little easier. And that night, the wind doesn't howl, and you sleep without dreams. But you're not safe yet, because someone in your village has stopped speaking, and no one knows why. Let's keep going, one candlelit nightmare at a time. It starts with old Thomas. You don't know his full name. Nobody does. He's just Thomas. He's always been old. Gray hair, 2 missing fingers, 1 working eye. He walks with a limp, wears a hat in the summer, and smells like mud and sour beer. He rarely talks, but when he does, it's usually to complain about the state of the road or to shout at goats. But 3 days ago, he stopped speaking completely. Not a word, not a grunt, not a nod, just stares. People noticed. At first, they said it was just Thomas being difficult, or tired, or having one of his spells. But then he stopped eating. Then he stopped moving. Now, he sits in front of his house every morning at the exact same time, on the exact same stool, staring at the same patch of road with his one good eye. Your uncle says it's a curse. Your aunt says it's grief. Thomas lost his son last winter. Fever took him in 2 days, buried before the ground thawed. Your cousin, of course, has a better theory. Shadow theft. That's what he calls it. He read about it in one of those tattered books someone left behind. It was full of strange stories, folklore, charms, cures, warnings. He said shadow theft happens when someone crosses your path with a bad heart. They don't take your things. They take your will, your voice, your memory, your spark. Not all at once, bit by bit. You ask him how to fix it. He shrugs. Mirror water, maybe. You blink. Mirror water is one of those things you've heard about but never seen. You ask your cousin where to get it. He says, you make it. Which of course means you're about to make it. That night, you boil rainwater in a blackened kettle. Add a silver coin, a pinch of salt, a strand of hair from the person affected. Hard to get, but your cousin managed to pull one from Thomas's hat while he wasn't looking. You pour the mixture into a shallow bowl and set it outside under the moonlight. It must reflect the sky. It must sit overnight, undisturbed. And it must be poured at dawn at a crossroads, while whispering the lost person's name backward. It sounds like nonsense. You do it anyway, because that's what people do when nothing else works. The next morning, Thomas is still silent. But when you walk past his house, he looks up. Only for a second. But it's something. You say nothing. You just keep walking. That evening, your cousin is carving something. It's small, made of corn husks. $1. You've seen them before, usually made by children, sometimes dressed up, sometimes burned. But this one's different. It's tied with red thread, stuffed with dried lavender and thistle. A sharp nail is hidden inside. You ask who it's for. Your cousin says, "No one." Then he hides it under the porch. You don't press, because sometimes the best way to keep something away is to give it something else to chew on. Later that night, your aunt boils chamomile, pours 3 cups, 1 for her, 1 for your cousin, 1 for the hearth. Yes, for the hearth. She sets it down gently, doesn't say a word, just stares at the fire and hums something low and soft, a lullaby from her mother's mother. You drink your tea. You stare at the cup meant for no one. And you wonder, do ghosts get thirsty? Do spirits sit beside the fire and warm their hands? Or do we make space for them out of guilt? Out of fear? Out of the creeping suspicion that we're never really alone in the dark? That night you dream. Not about dogs, not about Thomas. About a woman with ash on her cheeks and a ribbon around her wrist. She says something you don't understand and walks backward into the woods. When you wake, your hands are cold and your mouth tastes like pennies. You don't tell anyone because sometimes dreams are just dreams, and sometimes they're warnings. You're not getting a break, but you are getting a shovel. Let's keep going. The bell rings at noon. Not the church bell, the small one, rusted, cracked, only rung once when it's time to dig. Someone's died. You don't know who yet, but you can feel it, the way the air thickens, the way people stop talking mid-sentence and look toward the sound. No one rushes, no one weeps yet. You just wait. It was the weaver's son, 15. Fever took him fast. Same as last winter, same as Thomas's boy, same as the girl with the red scarf no one's mentioned since January. You don't cry. You didn't know him well. But you feel it in your chest anyway. A small pinch, like something tied a knot too tight and forgot to undo it. The burial is tomorrow, which means tonight is for preparation. First, the mirrors. All of them are covered with cloth. Some say it's to stop the soul from getting trapped. Others say it's to stop the dead from seeing themselves and realizing they've passed. Either way, you do it. Even the small cracked mirror by the window gets covered. Even the one in the storage shed no one uses anymore. Next, the windows. Coins go in the corners. Silver if you have it. Tin if you don't. They're for luck, for peace, for keeping spirits from wandering in through the cold draft near the sill. Your cousin draws a small chalk mark above each door, a circle with a line through it. He won't say what it means. You don't ask. Your aunt boils rosemary and sage. The scent fills the house, earthy, sharp, old. She dabs the mixture on everyone's forehead, says it keeps grief from sticking too long. You nod, even as it burns. That night, no one speaks above a whisper. The fire is kept low. Even the dog doesn't bark. When you sleep, you dream of footsteps, slow, wet, walking in a circle around the house. You wake up 3 times. Each time you check the charm bag. Each time, it's still warm. Morning comes heavy. Gray sky, cold wind, no birds. The body is carried in silence. No casket, just cloth and rope and solemn hands. He's laid in the earth before noon. People leave small offerings, bread, buttons, a carved figure, a smooth stone. Your cousin leaves a doll, not like the others. This one's white, untied, no nails. A gift, not a trap. Then come the whispers. They always come. Someone says the boy saw something before he died. Something in the corner of the room. Something that smelled like ash and rot and moved like smoke. Someone else says he spoke in tongues, not Latin, not anything from church. Just noises, fast and low and wrong. Another claims he'd been cursed. By who, no one says. You don't believe any of it. But you don't say that out loud. Because doubt is dangerous. And belief is the only thing that gives this place shape. That night, your aunt sets out a plate of food on the windowsill. Just in case, she says. You don't ask who it's for. You just help cover the mirrors again. And when your cousin marks the floor with salt, 4 lines in the shape of a cross, you don't question it. You step over the lines carefully. You sleep facing the door. And you pray, not for safety, but for stillness. Because stillness means the dead are resting. And that's the best you can hope for. You've buried the boy. You've salted the floor. You haven't looked in a mirror in 2 days. But now the air is shifting again. Because spring is coming. Which means planting. Which means fertility. Which means love spells. And oh yes, things are about to get awkward. Let's keep going. It starts with butter. Everything does, eventually. You come into the house and your aunt is swearing at the churn. She's been at it for hours, arms sore, hair sticking to her cheeks. And still, no butter. The cream's not spoiled. The churn is clean. The fire is warm. But nothing's forming. Which means only one thing. Someone's bewitched the milk, she says, wiping her forehead with the back of her hand. Probably that grin-faced girl down by the spring. She's always humming. Of course, everyone knows humming near livestock is suspicious. Same goes for whistling after dark, keeping too many cats, or laughing too hard at funerals. You suggest adding a hot nail to the churn. She's already done it. You suggest reciting the Lord's Prayer backwards. She glares at you. You shut up. Instead, you sit by the fire while she starts muttering over the churn like it owes her money. By sundown, she gets butter. Barely. And for safety, she buries the leftover cream by the fence post to trap the charm. That night, your cousin tells you about a girl who got pregnant because she stepped in a love circle. You blink. What's a love circle? Apparently, it's when someone draws a ring in ash and whispers your name while tossing rose petals and clover inside it. You ask who does that. He grins. Girls with mothers who whisper too much. You're not sure if he's joking. Later, you hear more. About the girl who sewed her name into a boy's sleeve so he'd dream about her. About the boy who drank water from a cup someone else used and couldn't stop thinking about her for a month. About the woman who baked her blood into a pie. You don't ask who ate it. The truth is, folk magic isn't just about ghosts and curses. It's also about love, about desperation, about hope, about trying to hold on to someone in a world where everything else slips through your hands like smoke. There's a charm for that. Many, actually. Some wear a dried frog in a pouch. Some bury hair wrapped in red wool beneath a doorstep. Some bake symbolic shapes into bread, keys, hearts, knives. Some tie knots into cord and whisper names into them, then hide them in a wall. And then there's the really strange ones, like the man who rubbed beeswax on his boots and walked in circles around a girl's house so her feet would always follow his. It didn't work. She married someone else, but his boots smelled great. You think about this the next day when you pass the smith's daughter. She's carrying rosemary, humming, smiling too wide. You do not make eye contact. You walk faster. That night, your cousin is carving again. Not a doll this time. A small heart-shaped charm. He doesn't say who it's for. You just watch, and you wonder. How many people in this village have charms hidden in their clothes? How many dreams were planted on purpose? How many meals came with unspoken wishes baked right in? You lie awake and think about the bread you ate yesterday. It was sweeter than usual. And maybe that's nothing. Or maybe someone's hoping you dream about them tonight. You roll over, face the wall, pull the blanket up to your ears, and hope, at the very least, the charm bag on your hip works both ways. You've survived the butter curse, dodged a love charm, mostly. But now things are getting weirder again, because the chickens are acting strange. And in this world, when animals act strange, it's never just weird. It's a message, an omen, a red flag with feathers. Let's get into it. It starts with the rooster. He crows at the wrong time, not dawn, not even close. It's the middle of the night. Cold. Still. Everyone asleep. And then, clear as anything, he crows once. Sharp and loud and final. You sit up in bed. Because everyone knows that sound isn't for waking. It's for warning. You hear your aunt stirring. Your cousin steps out of his bed, wraps a coat around his shoulders. No one says anything. By morning, the whole yard feels off. The hens won't leave the coop. The goats won't eat. The cat won't stop staring at the same patch of dirt by the root cellar. You know what this means. So does everyone else. Someone's been marked. Not cursed, not yet. But touched, watched, seen. You check the salt line under the window. Still there. You check the iron nail by the door. Still rusted in place. You check the charm bag. Still warm, but still. You can feel it. The feeling like being stared at from behind. Like being remembered by something you'd rather forget. Your aunt starts boiling something. Not for tea. For cleansing. She throws in pine, garlic skin, wormwood, something you can't name. She walks around the house with the pot, letting the steam rise in corners, whispering old words you don't understand. Your cousin lays bones on the table. Small ones. Bird. Squirrel. Maybe rabbit. He rolls them carefully, watches how they fall, frowns, then flips them over and rolls again. When he's done, he mutters, "It's circling." You don't ask what it is, because you've heard enough stories by now to know that naming something gives it shape, gives it permission. Instead, you head to the coop. The rooster is still in the corner, watching the door, like he's guarding something. You toss some grain. He doesn't move. You reach down to pick up an egg. It's cracked. Not broken, cracked. Long, jagged line down the middle. Empty inside. No yolk. Just dust. You drop it. Back in the house, your aunt tells you not to say anything to the neighbors. People spook easy. And once panic starts, it spreads faster than fire in a straw bed. Instead, you help your cousin draw protective symbols in ash across the thresholds. You hang sprigs of rosemary above the doors. You scatter salt in a wide circle around the barn. You do everything you've been taught. And still, you can feel it. The press of something just beyond sight. That night, you hear an owl. Nothing unusual, but it hoots 3 times, stops, then once more, which means death, or a visitor, or both. You try not to think about it. You try not to dream, but you do. In the dream, the cat speaks. In a voice like dry leaves, it tells you, check the well. You wake up cold. The cat is staring at you from the windowsill. You don't check the well. Not yet. Because checking things means finding things. And today, you don't want to find anything. You stay inside. You drink weak tea. You pretend everything is normal. But the cat won't stop staring, and the rooster never crows again. The animals have gone quiet. The bones won't lie right. And now we turn to one of the most quietly terrifying concepts in all of early American folk magic, the eye. Because some people don't need to curse you with words. They just look. Let's go. There's a man in the village. Everyone avoids him. Not because he's mean, not because he smells strange, not because he talks to himself, though yes, he does that too. It's because he has the eye. You've heard of it before. People who can see too much. Not the future, not exactly. Just more than they should. People who always seem to know who's sick before the fever starts. Who finds lost objects without asking. Who never step into puddles and never, ever get bitten by mosquitoes. He's one of them. His name is Elias. He walks slow, talks slow, smiles like he's keeping a secret. No one remembers when he got here. One day he wasn't in town. The next day, he was. No family, no horse. Just a bag, a pipe, and a look that makes your teeth itch. He buys his bread early, pays in coin. Sometimes trades feathers, herbs, teeth. No one asks where he gets them. People say he cured the widow's cough with nothing but a string and a whisper. They say he touched a sick dog once and the dog stood up and ran. They say he once looked at a patch of soil and said, "Move your carrots." And the next week, a snake nest came up through the ground. He's never said he's a healer. He's never called himself anything. He just watches. And that's the problem. Because when Elias looks at you, something happens. It's not a jolt, not a shock, just a slow sinking sensation, like cold water on your spine, like realizing you left the door open during a storm. One time, your cousin made a joke in front of him. Nothing mean, just a laugh, a teasing word about his coat. Elias looked at him. Just once, for a second. Your cousin didn't sleep for 2 nights. Said the shadows kept moving. Said he heard footsteps on the roof. Said he saw something crouching near the firewood, and it whispered in his voice. After that, no more jokes. Now, everyone calls him Mr. Elias, even the adults. No one touches him. No one invites him to sit. But when a baby's sick, when a cow won't birth, when someone finds 3 dead crows near their doorstep, they go to him. Quietly, privately. They bring small gifts. Soap, tobacco, coins. They don't speak unless spoken to. And when he gives you something, powder, string, a carved stone, you take it. You thank him. You don't ask questions. Because the worst thing you can do is offend someone with the eye. Some people are born with it. Some earn it through pain. Some have it passed down, like a curse wrapped in lace. And some just find it. You think about this when you pass him one morning on the road. He nods. You nod back. And that night, your dreams are clear for the first time in weeks. No footsteps, no whispers, no shadows pacing outside the house. You sleep deep, but still, you wake up and check the charm bag, because even blessings carry weight, and you're not ready to stop being careful. Not yet. You've survived love charms, dead eggs, and Mr. Elias's stare. But now, we come to something even more personal, something you never realized could be dangerous. Your own body. Or, more specifically, what falls off of it. Let's keep going. You're sweeping the floor when you see it. A single strand of hair. Yours. Long. Dark. Curled near the hearth. You reach down to grab it, but your aunt stops you. "Leave it," she says. You blink. "It's just hair." She shakes her head. Not anymore. She bends, picks it up with the edge of a spoon, and drops it into the fire. It sizzles, smokes, gone. You don't ask why. Not then. But later, once the chores are done and the sun is low, you ask your cousin what that was about. He doesn't laugh. He says, "Don't leave parts of yourself lying around." Hair, nails, blood, spit. All of it can be used. All of it has been used. You ask, "For what?" He shrugs. Binding, watching, love, hate, sickness. You wait. He adds, "Control." It makes sense, in a way. What's more you than a piece of you? So someone takes your hair, ties it in a knot, buries it under a step, whispers your name into a jar filled with ash and vinegar, and suddenly, you can't sleep. Or maybe you can't stop thinking about someone. Or maybe you just feel tired. All the time. No reason. Just wrong. There's a charm for undoing it, of course. There's always a charm, but you don't want to need it, which means you start being careful. You start burning your combings. You bury your nail clippings beneath the apple tree. You spit into the fire after every meal, just in case someone's watching you through your breath. Your aunt puts a small charm by the wash tub, not for dirt, for hair. Your cousin hides his razor after every shave. No one shares brushes. No one borrows cloths. No one throws out rags without cutting them into pieces first. You used to think these were just old habits, superstitions. But now you know. Magic doesn't need incantations. It just needs access. One piece of you is all it takes. There's a girl in the next village who lost a braid, cut clean off. Someone found it in the church pew, curled under the seat like a sleeping snake. They say she fell ill 3 days later. Couldn't eat, couldn't speak, wouldn't wake. They say her mother dug under the church floorboards with her bare hands until she found it, wrapped in a scarf, soaked in vinegar. They say the girl woke up the next morning. You never asked if it was true. You don't want to know. It's enough to believe it could be. That's the rule here. Belief is armor. Skepticism is a hole in your fence. You sit by the fire that night and check the floor. You find another hair. You burn it. And for good measure, you spit into the flames. The fire hisses. The room smells like sage and smoke. You lean back in your chair and try to relax. But you keep your charm bag on. Because even safe things can turn sharp in the dark. You've burned your hair, buried your fingernails, spit into the fire more times than you can count. But now we need to talk about things. Stuff you touch, stuff you carry, stuff that might not actually belong to you. Because cursed objects aren't just stories, they're warnings. Let's keep going. You're walking back from the mill when you see it. A coin, just sitting in the middle of the road, half buried in dirt, worn, dull, face down. You freeze. Your cousin, walking beside you, doesn't even pause. He walks around it, wide, like it's a hole, like it might swallow him whole. You ask, "Aren't you going to pick it up?" He shakes his head. Face down coins, a trap. You blink. A trap? He nods. Someone cursed it, wants to pass their bad luck on. You stare at it again. It looks harmless. Just a coin. But now you don't move either. You just watch it. And you realize no cart tracks over it. No footprints near it. Like the road's been avoiding it too. You leave it. Back at home, your aunt is muttering over a bundle. She says the blacksmith's wife brought over a basket of herbs this morning, a gift, for helping with the baby. But there was a hair in it, one long gray hair, curled around the rosemary like it grew there. And that's not normal. So she's unmaking the gift. That's what she calls it. Unmaking. She unwraps it, tosses the herbs into a pot, boils them with salt, ash, and iron filings. She stirs it with a wooden spoon she never uses for food. Then pours the mixture into the fire. The flames hiss green for a moment. Your cousin spits into the hearth. You do too. Better safe than cursed. Later, your uncle tells you the story of the clay pipe. He says he found it years ago, near the river. Carved. Beautiful. Never smoked. He took it home. Next day, the chickens wouldn't go near him. The firewood wouldn't catch. He dropped a knife on his foot. Twice. Your aunt got a nosebleed that lasted an hour. That night, they buried the pipe at the crossroads with a nail through the bowl. Everything went back to normal. He's never picked up anything since. You nod. Silently vow to never accept another gift without rinsing it in salt water and circling it with ash. That night, your cousin sharpens a knife and leaves it on the doorstep. You ask him why. He says someone borrowed it last week. Didn't say what for. And now the milk tastes off and the clock ticks louder than usual. You raise an eyebrow. He shrugs. Just until the moon changes. You let it go. You don't touch the knife. You don't even look at it too long. Instead, you sit near the fire and go through your pockets. One button, 2 coins, a feather. You toss the feather into the flames. Just in case, the coins stay. You turn them face up and whisper a blessing over them. And you remind yourself Nothing is just an object here. Everything holds meaning, weight, intention. Even a button can ruin a week if it belonged to someone unlucky, especially if they gave it to you while smiling too wide. You pull your blanket closer and think about every object you've touched in the last 3 days. You fall asleep listing them in your head, just in case you need to undo one later. You've stopped picking up coins. You're side-eyeing buttons. You've accepted that your own hair might betray you. But now the sky's getting strange. The wind's too warm. The air smells like metal. And your grandmother is whispering into a jar. Let's talk about weather magic. It starts with a heat that doesn't belong. Not the kind that comes from fire or the slow creep of spring. This is heavy heat. The kind that presses against your back and makes the trees go still. The kind that makes birds stop chirping and dogs hide under porches. The kind that makes you look up at the sky even though it's clear. Your grandmother feels it too. She hasn't said anything. She rarely does. But this morning she stood outside with bare feet and pressed her hand to the dirt. Then she went inside and pulled the curtains. All of them. And when you ask her what she's doing, she says just 3 words. Storm's been called. You're not sure what that means. You ask your cousin. He shrugs, but then he gets up and nails a horseshoe above the kitchen door, just in case. Later, you find your grandmother at the back of the house, sitting cross-legged on the floor, whispering into a small clay jar. She stops when she sees you, lids the jar, ties a cord around it, tucks it into her apron. You don't ask, because you've learned, if someone's whispering into a container, you let them finish. That night, the wind changes. It comes from the wrong direction, carries the smell of rain and something sharp. Your uncle says to bring the animals inside. Your aunt pours salt at every doorway. Your cousin sprinkles ash into the hearth and draws a circle in the soot. No one sleeps. You sit by the fire, listening to the crackle, the floorboards, the rising sound of wind that isn't wind. And then, in the middle of the night, your grandmother starts humming. A low, tuneless hum, like bees trapped in a tin cup. She opens the window just a crack, whispers something you can't hear. Then she spits into the wind, and the air changes, just slightly, enough to notice, enough to make your skin prickle. The next morning, the sky is still gray, but it hasn't rained. The wind has calmed. The birds are back. Your grandmother boils tea, doesn't speak. You find the clay jar buried beneath the window, a nail driven through the lid. You don't touch it. You just nod, because weather magic isn't flashy. It's not thunder called down from mountaintops or lightning summoned from staffs. It's whispers, spit, salt. It's jars and soot and breath. And belief. Your cousin tells you about a man who used to tie rags to trees before storms. Said it would distract the wind. He died dry as a stone in a drought that lasted 3 months. The trees kept their rags. The village kept his method. Even now you see strips of cloth fluttering on fence posts before rain. Some people say it's nonsense. But those people still pull their clothes off the line early when the sky gets dark. You sit on the porch that evening and watch the clouds. You hold a glass of water with a coin at the bottom. Something your aunt says keeps the sky from noticing you. You're not sure if it works, but you don't take the coin out. Because sometimes magic is just what we do when we're scared and want control. And sometimes it works. The storm passed. Barely. The wind has calmed, the jars are buried, and your grandmother has stopped whispering. For now. But sleep doesn't come easy tonight. And when it does, it brings things with it. Shadows, names, and old truths that no one talks about in daylight. Because now it's time to talk about dreams. You're asleep when it happens. Not deeply, not the good kind of sleep. You're drifting, half there. The room is still and warm and the fire is low, and you're somewhere between the weight of your blanket and the sound of rain starting again outside. And then, clear, quiet, close, you hear it. Your name, just once, spoken right next to your ear, but no one's there. You jolt awake, sit up, look around. The room is empty, the windows closed, the candles burned halfway down. But you're not alone. Not exactly. You can feel it, like the echo of a hand that was just on your shoulder. You lie back down, heartbeat tapping a little faster than before, and try to remember what you were dreaming. You can't. Just flashes, shapes, a long hallway, a mouth that didn't open, but still moved. You close your eyes again. But sleep feels different now. And when you finally drift off again, it's not restful. It's active. Dreams come hard and fast and loud. You're walking through the woods with bare feet. The trees bend toward you. The leaves whisper. The air is full of smoke, but there's no fire. Something follows. You never turn around. You wake up with a sore throat and your blanket tangled around your legs. Your cousin is already awake, sitting at the table, drinking tea made from something grayish and bitter-looking. He doesn't say good morning. He just looks up and says, "Did you hear it?" You nod. He nods back. He tells you that sometimes dreams carry messages, but not all dreams. Not the soft ones, not the nonsense ones about flying or teeth falling out, or being late to a wedding that doesn't exist. The real dreams, the ones that leave marks. A bruise on your shoulder, mud on your feet, salt on your pillow. He says if you wake up thirsty, something might have tried to take your voice. He says if you wake up wet, something might have been pulled through with you. You ask if that's common. He shrugs. More than you'd think. You sit down beside him and drink what he's drinking. It tastes like the smell of rain on stone. You ask if he dreams a lot. He says not anymore. He started wearing a charm under his shirt, stitched inside, carved from bone. It's been warm for 3 months straight. He says if it ever goes cold, he'll stop sleeping entirely. You laugh. He doesn't. That afternoon, your aunt tells you not to nap near open windows. Dreams are more likely to wander that way, out or in. She hangs a small pouch above the bed, filled with chamomile, salt, fennel, a nail, and a feather, tied shut with red thread. She says it's not to stop the dreams, just to slow them down. Dreams aren't always bad, she says. Sometimes they carry warnings, clues. Sometimes the dead try to speak. Sometimes ancestors leave signs. But you have to know how to read them. And that's the hard part. Because dreams aren't like books. They're messy. They mix truth and nonsense. They lie and warn and reflect and bite. And most people don't remember them right. She says if you see a white dog, that's a warning. If you see a woman with no face, that's a question. If you see your own house from the outside, you need to wake up immediately. You ask why. She doesn't answer. That night, You put salt under your pillow. You sleep on your side, facing the door. And when the dreams come, they're quiet this time. Just soft shapes, footsteps, a room that stretches too far, a bell ringing once and then never again. You wake up with a feeling like you forgot something important. You check the pouch. Still there. Still warm. Your cousin offers you another cup of that terrible tea. You drink it, and you write your dream down, just in case. Because tomorrow, it might start making sense. Or it might not. But either way, you're not letting it get ahead of you. Not again. You've begun recording your dreams. Drinking the bitter tea. Watching shadows from the corners of your eyes. You've done everything you're supposed to. But now something else is watching you. And it's got fur. Because this part's about familiars. The cat stares at you. You're not doing anything, just folding linen, sitting by the fire, minding your own business. And she's across the room, perched on the bench like royalty, pupils like two pinholes, not blinking, not moving. You pause, meet her eyes. Nothing. You look away. She doesn't. This has been happening more and more. The cat, your grandmother's technically, has never liked you. She's never hissed, never scratched. She's not that kind of creature. But she knows. There's an awareness behind those eyes that makes your skin tighten at the back of your neck. Your cousin says her name is Mittens. No one calls her that to her face. You call her the cat, and she seems to prefer it that way. One evening, you see her sitting on the roof, just watching. Not the birds, not the road, just the trees. Like she's waiting for something to arrive from the woods. Your grandmother says she's been around longer than any of you. She says she was born without a shadow. You blink. You ask what that means. Your grandmother just smiles and tells you to sweep clockwise today. That night, the cat brings in a dead bird, lays it on the floor, right by your bed. It's not mangled, not chewed, just delivered. Its eyes are still open. You take it outside and bury it near the old stump. The cat watches from the windowsill. The next morning, your uncle finds a mark on the barn wall. 3 lines. Not quite scratches, not quite carved. Deep, precise, arranged like a symbol. No one knows what it means. The cat sits by the milk bucket and licks her paws like she's never seen the inside of a barn in her life. You try not to look at her too long, but you can feel her looking at you. Your cousin tells you about familiars over breakfast. He says they're not just animals, not pets, not companions. They're connected to people, to places, to practices. He says some are born that way, some are chosen, and some are just creatures that got too close to something they shouldn't have, like fire, or blood, or grief. He tells you about the preacher's goat that used to stand outside the church and baa whenever someone lied during a sermon. He tells you about the black dog that followed 3 generations of midwives, always arriving just before the baby and leaving right after. He tells you about the crow that mimicked the sound of a bell. So perfectly, people thought it was haunted. It wasn't. Just loyal. You ask if familiars are dangerous. He thinks about it, then says, only when ignored. That night, you leave a small dish of milk out by the door. You don't say it's for the cat. You just do it. The milk is gone in the morning. There are paw prints in the dust, but they don't lead anywhere. Just a circle. One perfect ring. Like someone or something walked around your house once, then vanished. Your cousin says that's a good sign. Maybe. Later that week, you see the cat curled up on your blanket. You approach slowly. She lifts her head, blinks once. Her eyes are different today. Lighter, quieter, like she's made peace with you. Or maybe she's just watching you more closely now. You don't move her. You lie down beside her. She stays. And that night, your dreams are empty, clean, clear, no voices, no names, just wind and water and quiet. And in the morning, you wake up rested. And she's gone. Back to wherever she goes when she isn't needed. But you leave the milk out anyway. Because the world is full of things that don't quite fit, don't quite obey, don't quite die. And sometimes, they like to curl up beside us and pretend they're tame. The cat hasn't returned, but you still leave out the milk. You do that now, not because you understand it, but because you'd rather not find out what happens if you stop. The air's still heavy, the days are shorter, and something keeps tugging at your dreams, like a voice stuck behind glass. So today, you're going to the crossroads. You were told not to, but here we are. It starts with a basket, a simple one, woven tight, meant to carry eggs. You find it sitting on the stoop just after sunrise. It wasn't there last night. No note, no knock, no footprints in the frost, just the basket. Empty, clean, tied with a strip of red cloth around the handle. You bring it inside, show your aunt. She goes pale, doesn't touch it, just tells you to take it back. You ask where. She says, "You'll know." And she won't say anything else, not while the basket's in the room. So you wrap it in burlap and carry it under your arm, walking the old trail that winds through the trees, past the creek, down the ridge, and out toward the hollow. You know where you're going even before your feet take you there. The crossroads, where four old paths meet in a clearing so still, even the birds don't sing. It doesn't feel wrong. Not exactly, but it doesn't feel like the rest of the world either. The air here is too still. The grass doesn't bend. Your footsteps feel distant, like you're walking across something thick and sleeping. There's a stone in the center, flat, smooth, with a crack down the middle like it was struck by lightning once and then just stayed like that. You place the basket on the stone, and you wait, because that's what you're supposed to do. Not because you were told, because your bones remember. Something in you understands. You don't sit, you don't speak, you don't move your feet. You wait. The wind changes. A single leaf skitters across the clearing, stops at your boot, spins once, then stops again. You hear something behind you. Software familiar. It says your name, not loud, not urgent, just knowing. You don't turn around, because that's the rule. You never turn around at a crossroads. Not when your name is called. Not even if the voice sounds like your mother. Especially if it sounds like your mother. You keep facing forward. You stare at the basket. You count your breaths. 1, 2, 3. The light shifts. The trees creak, and the voice fades. Not far, just out of reach, but it doesn't call again. Eventually, the air feels normal again. You don't say goodbye. You don't look down at the stone. You just turn and walk the way you came. And when you return home, your aunt is sweeping the doorway like nothing happened. But she nods, just once, and says, "You did right." Later that night, your cousin tells you more. He says the crossroads aren't just places where paths meet. They're places where choices meet, where the veil thins, where the land remembers things even people forget. He says you can bury things there, things you want to forget, things you want gone, things you never want to see again. You ask if that works. He says, sometimes. But there's a risk. He says anything left at the crossroads might be picked up by something else, something curious, something old. And once it's taken, it knows you. You ask what that means. He says, just don't leave your name there. You lie awake that night and think about the voice that called to you, how it knew your name, how close it was, how badly you wanted to turn around, and how lucky you were not to. You clutch your charm bag tighter, and you promise yourself that if anyone ever leaves you another basket, you won't open it, not even to check. You'll walk it straight to the stone, eyes forward, feet steady. Because there are places you go only once, and some doors should never open behind you. The basket is gone. The crossroads is behind you. You didn't look back, and you're still here, so that's something. But now, inside the house, something feels off. Not loud, not obvious, just quieter. Like something that used to be watching out for you has turned its face the other way. And that brings us to marks. Not just signs, not decorations, protections. Symbols carved into wood, painted onto skin, etched in ash, laid down not to be seen but to be remembered, and sometimes forgotten. It's your aunt who notices first. She's wiping down the windowsills after a long night of rain like needles, rain that hissed in the grass like voices. She's moving fast, not her usual careful pace, because something about this morning doesn't feel right. Then she stops, looks up at the lintel above the front door, frowns. You look too, and there it is, a bare patch, just wood, clean, blank, no mark. But there was one. You remember? A symbol in soot and beeswax drawn last winter. 4 lines intersecting a 5th, an old sign. Simple, protective, quiet. Gone now, not faded, wiped. Your aunt says nothing, just goes to the hearth, stirs the ash, adds some ground eggshell, a pinch of salt, a slice of root you don't recognize. She draws a fresh mark in the palm of her hand, then on the door, then on your forehead. It stings, not badly, just enough to wake you up fully. Your cousin says he didn't remove it. Your uncle swears he hasn't touched it, and that leaves the wind, or something riding it. You're not afraid yet, but you're alert now, that sharp-edged kind of awake that makes everything a little too bright, the way animals go still before a quake, the way you breathe when you're not sure what woke you. The new mark sits heavy on your skin, not painful, not warm, just present. It hums, not aloud, but somewhere just beneath hearing. Your aunt says if a mark disappears without explanation, you don't just replace it. You ask why not. She looks at you hard, because whatever removed it might take that as an invitation, a challenge, or worse, a sign that you noticed. And once it knows you're paying attention, it starts paying attention back. So you do more than replace it. You reinforce. That night, every threshold in the house gets double sealed. Salt, chalk, ash, a mix of pine tar and molasses smeared in a symbol above the fireplace, soot brushed in circles around the bedposts, and in the corners of every room, tiny bundles of thorn and thread, not for decoration, for deterrence. Your cousin tells you about a time someone tried to wash away the marks during a wedding, thought it was silly, thought it made the place look dirty. The next morning, the bride lost her voice. The groom broke a tooth without opening his mouth, and the priest's horse dropped dead on the road for no reason at all. The marks went back up before noon. Nobody questioned it again. You don't sleep that night. Not because you're afraid, exactly. Just because you feel watched. Not by the windows. Not by the cat. Not by anything visible. Just a sense of attention. Like something is waiting to see if you'll forget again. But you won't. In the morning, you draw your own mark. First time, careful hand. You use what your aunt gives you. A bowl of thick black paste that smells like wood smoke and rainwater. You draw it on the inside of your coat, not for anyone to see. Just for the space between your ribs and your shadow. And when it dries, it feels heavier than it should. Like it's holding something back. Like it's pushing something away. And that is comfort. Strange comfort, but comfort all the same. You walk out into the morning air with your coat on, your mark dry, your charm bag warm against your chest, and the house behind you feels quiet again. Not empty, not unguarded, just watched over, as it should be. You've redrawn the mark, reinforced every threshold, slept with salt beneath the bed and a charm under your tongue. The house has gone still again. Still, but not empty, because something is waiting in the quiet places. And tonight, that means the mirrors. You've never liked the one in the hallway. It's not special. Just a rectangle of old glass in a wooden frame. It leans slightly to the left, always has. And no matter how often you clean it, there's a smudge in the lower corner that never disappears. But it's the way it looks back at you. Not just reflects you. Looks like it has its own version of your face, standing just half a breath behind yours, thinking things you haven't thought yet. You start covering it at night, not because anyone tells you to, because you can't stand the idea of passing it in the dark and seeing more than you should. You use an old shawl, heavy, gray. It settles over the frame like a sigh. You feel better immediately. Lighter, like you sealed a door you didn't realize was open. Your cousin catches you doing it and doesn't tease you. He just says good, then starts covering the one in his room too, and the one above the wash basin, and the little hand mirror your aunt keeps wrapped in flannel at the bottom of a drawer. By the end of the week, no glass in the house is uncovered after sundown. Even the windows get draped, not just for warmth, for silence, for separation. Your grandmother, quiet for days, finally speaks as she folds her quilt one morning. She says reflections don't always reflect. Sometimes they repeat, sometimes they respond, and sometimes they remember. She tells you about her sister, how she used to talk to herself in the mirror as a girl, play pretend, whisper secrets, laugh alone, until one day she stopped talking altogether, wouldn't look in glass, wouldn't let anyone else look either. She started sleeping with her back to the wall and a knife under her pillow. Your grandmother says she's still alive, still quiet, still watching corners. She never says what her sister saw, but the way her hands tremble when she folds that quilt tells you enough. That night, you forget. You're tired. You're cold. You undress in the hallway and glance up before thinking. The mirror is uncovered, just for a second. And for that second, your reflection doesn't move with you. It lags, a half blink behind, a breath delayed, like it's adjusting, like it wasn't expecting you. You cover it so fast the shawl slips and falls back off again. You cover it again, slower, hands shaking. You don't look again. You sleep poorly. And in the morning, you tell your cousin what happened. He listens, nods, pours salt into a bowl, and adds a handful of dried sage, then dips his thumb in and presses it to your forehead. Just once, you feel warmer afterward, grounded and still. You don't uncover the mirror. Not for 3 days. When you finally do, you check your reflection. It blinks when you blink, moves when you move, smiles when you smile. You're not comforted, because now you know what to watch for. Your aunt tells you that during storms, you should never look into a mirror. Glass remembers lightning, she says. It holds flashes, traps them, lets things through. You don't ask what she means. You just start lighting candles instead. Reflections can wait. You clean yourself with water from a bowl. Check your clothes by touch. Shave by feel. And when you catch yourself passing a window after dusk, you look down. Not because you're afraid of ghosts, but because not everything you see in glass is dead. Some things are curious, and some are hungry. And most, they're just waiting for someone to look a second too long, so they can look back. You've stopped glancing at glass. You sweep the corners of your room without looking into them too long. The house feels protected, for now. But the land itself holds old memories. Beneath the surface, beneath the roots and gravel and moss, there are things that were once laid to rest, and not everything stays buried. This is where we get into burial magic. You're walking a path you know, not far, just down to the stream to check the traps, a clear trail worn into the earth from decades of boots and hooves and bare feet, and you've walked it 100 times since spring. But today, your foot sinks. Just a little. A soft patch. Too soft. Like the ground sighed under you. You freeze. Shift your weight. Step back. And there it is. A dip. Round. Small. Sunken like an old footprint that doesn't match any boot you've seen. The air smells different here. Still cold. Still crisp. But sweet too. Rot sweet, leaf sweet, earth that's been turned and pressed and whispered to. You don't move. Then your cousin comes up behind you, sees the spot, and his whole face changes. He mutters under his breath, words you don't recognize, words that don't sound like his voice, and pulls you away by the sleeve. You don't step off the trail this time of year, he says. Not once. Not for anything. You ask why. He doesn't answer. That night, you ask your aunt. She sighs, wipes her hands, sits, she says, because the land's remembering now. And when the land remembers, it gets hungry. You ask what's buried out there. She looks at you for a long time, then says, "Everything." You learn more in pieces, stories around the stove, bits of conversation you weren't meant to hear. There are graves in the woods no one visits. Old ones, forgotten ones, not all marked with stone. Some were dug in haste. Some weren't dug deep enough. Some never meant to hold what they now hold. And when winter nears, when the frost stirs and the veil thins, those places wake up. They shift. They call. And if you're unlucky, they answer. Your grandmother tells you to stop whistling at night. You didn't know you were. She says sound carries strange near-hollowed ground. Might stir the wrong kind of memory. You listen. She teaches you how to walk with purpose, how to keep your boots firm, how to press your heel into the ground before your toes. She says the dead don't follow confident steps, only wandering ones. Your cousin shows you an old pouch of dried herbs he keeps in his coat pocket. He says it's just rosemary and juniper, but it smells sharper, like burnt sugar and smoke. He says you carry it if you have to pass a place where the ground looks too smooth. He says, "Don't ever kneel there." You ask why. He just says, "Because some spots are waiting." You help your uncle stack wood near the south fence and find a patch of moss shaped like a spiral. Unnatural. Too neat. Like someone planted it. He tells you not to touch it. Just step around. And so you do. That night, your dreams are muddied. Feet in water, roots brushing your ankles. A voice calling from below the floorboards, asking why you left it there. You wake up with cold dirt under your fingernails. You didn't dig anything, but the dream did. Your aunt gives you a tea so bitter you gag on the first sip. She says it closes what's open, whatever that means. Later, you walk the trail again. But this time, you watch every step like it matters. Because now you know, the land listens. It hears how you walk, where you stop, what you whisper when you think no one's around. And sometimes, it answers. Not out of malice, not out of kindness, just out of memory. And memory in this place has teeth. You've started walking lighter now, slower. The woods don't feel like a shortcut anymore. They feel like a place you pass through only when invited. And lately, even the birds have gone quiet. The paths are colder. The roots creep closer. And you're beginning to understand what the older ones meant when they talked about keeping the land fed. Because now it's time to talk about offerings, not prayers. Not thank yous, gifts, given to keep balance, to mark respect, or to say, "I know you're here, and I know this isn't mine." It starts with honey. You don't know why. You're gathering eggs when your grandmother presses a small clay bowl into your hands. No explanation. Just honey. Thick and golden, still warm from the hearth. "Leave it at the creek," she says, "where the water bends, before sunset. Don't look back." You ask what it's for. She doesn't answer. So you go. The sun's already low when you reach the bend. You've been here before, fishing, bathing, skipping stones. But tonight, the light is wrong. Softer. Stranger. The shadows fall in different places. You kneel slowly, set the bowl in the moss beside the bank, and you don't look back. Even when the trees creak, even when the water gurgles like it's holding its breath. You walk home with your eyes forward and your heartbeat in your throat. You don't ask again what it was for. The next day, the garden looks greener. A few of the hens are laying again. Your grandmother hums softly while she knits. First time in weeks, and you don't mention the bowl, because some gifts are given without asking for anything back. Your cousin explains more in his way, casual, between bites of cornbread and spoonfuls of stew. He says the land is like a guest you forgot invited. It doesn't ask for much. Just little things. Honey, bread, a pinch of tobacco, a song sometimes, a coin in a dry place, milk at a tree's roots, salt on the threshold during the first snow, not to bribe, to acknowledge. Because the land remembers when you take, and it listens for when you give. He tells you a story about a boy who carved his name into a birch tree and never left an offering. That tree never bloomed again, and the boy couldn't keep food in his house for more than a week. Every loaf went moldy, every jar cracked, even water tasted wrong. He moved 2 counties over before things calmed down. Still won't touch birchwood. Your aunt leaves thimbles on fence posts, always copper. She never says why. Your uncle buries crumbs in the east field after every harvest, even when the crows are long gone. You see your grandmother sew a bundle of herbs into the hem of an old shirt, then fold it and leave it by the back gate. You ask if someone lost it. She just says, "Not someone." Some gifts are preventative, some are reparative, and some are apologies. You begin to notice how often people are giving things away without being asked. A comb placed on a rock, a ribbon tied to a branch, a broken spoon left on a fence rail, none of it random, all of it placed, on purpose, like a language spoken without words. You try it yourself one day. You find a smooth stone in the shape of a heart, and you carry it in your pocket all week. You don't know why. Then one morning, you wake up from a dream where the wind was trying to whisper something in your ear, and you couldn't hear it. And when you woke up, your pillow was damp with sweat. Or water, you're not sure. You go to the woods, find a small hollow between 2 roots, and leave the stone there. Just to see. The next night, you sleep through until dawn. No dreams, no whispers, just rest. And in the morning, your boots are dry for the first time in a week. You don't tell anyone, but you keep your eye out for more stones, more chances to speak in that quiet language. Because some magic doesn't look like magic. It looks like generosity, like respect, like remembering what you were taught even when no one's watching. And that kind of magic, it doesn't just protect you, it changes you. You've learned how to give without asking. You know where to step and where not to. You've drawn the right marks, faced the right way, buried the right jars, burned the right roots. The world around you seems quieter now, but not in a peaceful way. More like the quiet before a question, a pause before something asks your name. Because now we're going to talk about naming magic, and the strange power that comes from saying the wrong thing too many times, or saying the right thing out loud. It starts small. You're out behind the barn, feeding the chickens, when your cousin calls to you. Only, he doesn't use your name. He says, "Hey," or "you," or sometimes just whistles. You don't think much of it until you notice he does it every time. Even when no one else is around. Even when you're sitting right next to each other and there's no one else he could possibly be talking to. You ask him about it. He shrugs. Names carry. You wait. That's all he says. Later that day, you're sweeping the porch when your aunt drops a spoon, and under her breath she mutters, "Don't say it." You weren't saying anything. She wasn't talking to you. She was talking to the air, to the name she almost said. Because in this house, you learn there are things that don't get named out loud. Not the shadow behind the woodpile. Not the sound on the roof when it isn't raining. Not the echo that comes back when you call someone across the hollow and hear your own voice answer. Your grandmother calls them walkers. Your uncle calls them passers. Your cousin calls them those. Nobody uses the same name twice, and you never, ever speak it after dark. You learn to call things by what they do, not what they are. The one that watches from the fence. The one that comes in the smoke. The one that hums. It sounds silly at first, then it starts to make sense. Because once you name something, you fix it. You pin it to a place. You give it shape. And once something has shape, it can hear. It can find you. Your grandmother says names are invitations. You write them on your tongue, and then you send them into the world without knowing who's listening. She tells you about a girl once, bright, loud, careless with her stories. She named a thing 3 times in 1 week, said it out loud, said it at the window. They found her shoes by the creek. Just the shoes. No footprints. You stop using names unless you have to. You stop calling out to the woods. You stop saying the names of the dead unless you're standing beside their stones, hand on the earth, and even then, only once, and softly. Because the thing is, a name isn't just a word. It's a key. And once you've spoken it, you don't get to choose who turns it. Your cousin shows you how to unname something. He takes a strip of paper, writes a word on it you're not allowed to read, folds it 3 times, then burns it in the hearth without ever letting it touch the floor. "Gone now," he says. You ask what it was. He says, "That's the point." Some names aren't just dangerous. They're alive. They grow when spoken, like a fire catching dry leaves. You remember the first time you said your own name out loud in the woods. You were 8. You were singing. You didn't think it mattered. You didn't sleep that night. You don't remember the dream. But you woke up crying, and there was a handprint on the inside of the window. Too high to be yours. Too small to be your uncle's. That window has stayed covered ever since. You don't sing in the woods anymore. You don't call out to things you can't see. And you don't say your name when you're alone. You learn to introduce yourself with silence, with presence, with the shape of your breath and the rhythm of your steps, because names can be stolen, twisted, fed upon, and it's better to be unknown than to be called. You've stopped using names. You say you and that one and them, even when it feels ridiculous. You've learned how silence protects, how honey heals, how salt holds the line. But what no one tells you, what you find out only after it's too late, is that sometimes even silence isn't enough. Sometimes something comes back, and it looks like you. It's a week after the frost starts to settle in your bones. You wake up early, before the rooster, before the light, and something about the house feels wrong. Not loud, not out of place, just off. You're halfway down the stairs when you hear footsteps on the floorboards below. Your cousin? Number. He's still in bed. You checked. Your aunt? Your uncle? Maybe. But then you hear it. Breathing. Not labored. Not scared. Just breathing like you breathe. Measured. Even. A little too slow. You pause on the last step. And then it turns the corner. You, wearing your coat, moving like you do. Almost. Like someone watched you long enough to get the rhythm right, but not the weight. It doesn't stop when it sees you. Just tilts its head. Not a copy. Not a shadow. A version. The version of you that might have stepped into a different path, followed a different creak, answered a different whisper, and now it's here, inside. And it's smiling. Not wide. Just enough. You don't remember what happens next, only that you wake up with the cat sitting on your chest, staring, purring so hard your ribs buzz. You're back in your bed. The fire's gone out. The door's locked from the inside. Your coat is hanging by the door, exactly where you left it. But the sleeves are wet, and the hem smells like iron. You ask your cousin if he saw anything strange last night. He says, more than once. But that's all he'll say. You start checking your reflection more carefully. Not in mirrors, you're done with mirrors, but in water, windows, pots, anything that gives back an image. You start counting moles, freckles, the exact shape of your jaw. You hum to yourself when you walk into rooms. Just a little tune only you know. Something no copy would hum unless it remembered what it used to be. You learn the stories fast. The girl who waved to her father from the porch while she was still asleep upstairs. The man who knocked on his own door and asked to be let in before the rain hit. The twin who wasn't born. These stories come with rules. Never open the door at twilight no matter who's knocking. Never follow yourself into the woods. And if you see yourself at a distance, turn around, go inside, and don't speak. Your grandmother says, they come when something is missing. You ask, missing from where? She says, that's the wrong question. They come to fill something, to replace, to try. You don't have to invite them. You just have to leave the wrong space open. A coat left outside overnight. A name spoken in your own voice 3 times near running water. A dream you don't finish. Some say they're warnings. Others say they're reflections that got loose. But the old stories? The old ones say they're what happens when the land remembers you too well. When it holds onto your footsteps, your face, your shape, and then sends it back to see if you still fit. Sometimes you do. Sometimes you don't. And sometimes you wake up to find your own voice humming in the next room. And it stops the second you listen. Your coat stays inside now. Your voice stays quiet. You hum only when you're sure no one, no thing is listening. And your reflection, well, you don't check it anymore. Because if you don't look, it can't wave first. But the air has shifted. The clouds hang lower. The trees lean closer. And everyone's talking a little softer. Because something's coming. You don't need a calendar or a clock to tell you what season it is now. You just have to feel it. This is the season of weather magic. You wake up to wind. Not the gentle kind that rustles leaves. The thinking kind. the kind that slinks under doors and presses against the walls like it wants in. Your cousin is already up, tying a length of red yarn around the bedpost. You ask if it's going to storm. He says, yes. You check the sky. It's calm, bright, even. He says, that's the problem. Your grandmother starts muttering as she stirs the morning pot. Not words for you to understand. Not a prayer either, just phrases, warnings for the air. Your aunt's already tucking oilcloth under the windows and pinning birch bark over the hearth. They know what's coming, and they're not trying to stop it. They're just trying not to invite it in. The wind in this place doesn't just blow. It speaks. You've heard it, not clearly. Not in sentences, but in shapes. In thoughts that aren't yours that drift in while your mind's still waking. It carries things, names, secrets, blame. Once your cousin whistled into the wind on a dare, just once. The very next day, the well turned sour. Every bucket came up red. No one said anything, but your grandmother threw away the rope and drew 3 chalk circles around the base. Now no one whistles here, not even birds. And when you hear one, you stop walking, because that isn't a bird. That's something trying to remember the shape of a bird. The snow comes the next day. Software white, gentle. You step outside and watch it fall. Your aunt grabs your wrist. Don't let it land on your tongue. Not this snow, not the first snow after the wind changes. You ask why? She doesn't answer. But she gives you a jar, empty, and tells you to leave it open on the fence post until sundown. You do. The snow fills it halfway. When you bring it back, she stoppers it, seals it with wax, and buries it behind the shed. She says the storm carries stories. And some of them are better left untold. Some of them are looking for listeners. You remember how last year someone followed a trail of footsteps into the woods after a snow. They didn't come back. The trail did. Same steps, same pattern, but they were all facing the house. No one followed them that time. You learn fast. Wind needs to be answered without echo. Snow needs to be left unread. Rain? That's a different thing entirely. Rain is memory. It brings back what's been buried. It softens walls. You're taught to close every book, cover every mirror, hide every sharp object during a thunderstorm. Not for safety, for silence. Because lightning opens things. Doors, dreams, mouths that haven't spoken in years. You wake one night to thunder that shakes your ribs. The cat is under the bed, hissing. You check the windows. The latch on the cellar door is open. You know it was locked. You know. But the rain is pouring, and something's knocking gently, politely, like it knows it shouldn't, but is still asking to be let in. You don't answer. You don't move. And by morning, the latch is closed again. Not by you, and the doormat is wet, but only in the center. You sweep the water out. You don't ask who came, because the storm already told you. You just weren't meant to hear it clearly. Not yet. You've seen what the wind can carry. You've learned not to whistle, not to name, not to leave things open during rain. You've watched the sky like it might hold a grudge, and sometimes it does. But now, we move into something even closer, something you carry with you, something you shed without thinking. We're talking about body magic. Hair, nails, skin, teeth. Because in folk magic, your body isn't just yours. It's a map, a tool, a key. And if someone gets even the smallest piece of you, they don't need your permission to use it. It starts when you notice your cousin burning something in the stove. Not logs, not food, just little pieces. You ask what it is. He shrugs and says, hair, clippings, bits of thread from the shirts I've bled in. You blink. You weren't expecting him to be so casual. He says it like it's nothing, but your aunt nods, like it's the only sane thing to do. She tells you never to leave hair on the brush, never let your nail clippings hit the ground, never, ever toss out a bloodied rag. You burn it, or bury it deep, or you keep it somewhere safe. Because if someone wants to twist you from the inside out, they don't need a photo or a strand of your voice. They just need a piece, one strand, one sliver, and they can start pulling. You think back. How many times have you lost a strand of hair to the wind, left skin on a doorknob, bit your nails and dropped the edge on the floor? You start keeping track. You become aware of every eyelash. Every time you brush your coat and something flakes off, your grandmother shows you her bundle, wrapped in deer hide, tied 3 times with red twine. Inside, her own hair, gray and frayed, pressed tight with dried salt. She says it keeps her safe. She says you must never let someone else collect more of you than you've collected yourself. You wonder what happens if they do. You don't ask. You've seen enough not to need the answer spoken. Your cousin tells you about the man who spit in the wrong field. 3 days later, he couldn't speak without stuttering. Not out of nerves, out of knots. Like his tongue remembered something it wasn't supposed to. They say someone collected it, from a leaf, from the wind, and used it to tie his voice into itself. You wonder how long that can last. Forever, your cousin says, or until the thread breaks. You ask, what thread? He says, exactly. You learn there are old ways to protect your body's leavings. You can salt them, wrap them in muslin, draw circles in ash before discarding them. You can even whisper over them, ask them not to betray you. Sometimes they listen. Your uncle once lost a tooth. He buried it in the woods, not because of animals, because of people. He said it was an old wisdom. Never let anyone else bury your parts, because the ground doesn't care whose hands did the planting, only what grows from it. You've seen dolls made from wax, wrapped in twine, filled with hair. They don't speak, but sometimes you hear something when you pass them in the drawer. A soft sound, a hush, like breathing through cloth. Your cousin once pointed to a stump behind the house and said, "Someone's buried a fingernail there. That's why nothing grows." You ask, "Whose nail?" He says, "Don't matter. Just don't touch the stump." And you don't. You walk around it every time, even if it means getting your boots soaked. You never comb your hair outside now. You sweep the floor 3 times after trimming your nails, and when you cut yourself by accident, you save the cloth. Even if it's just a drop, even if it's just yours. Because the truth is, your body remembers. And when someone else learns how to read that memory, they can write over it, change the ending, or worse, open it like a door. You've started sweeping your shed twice a day. You bury your hair clippings behind the chicken coop in a jar filled with salt. You burn your nail shavings and spit into the fire when no one's watching. Just in case. Because you understand now that pieces of you don't stay yours. They wander. And when they fall into the wrong hands, or even the right hands at the wrong moment, they can do more than harm. They can bind. So tonight, we go into knots. And not the kind you tie on your boots. It's early morning when you see her, your aunt, braiding thread into a little loop, then threading it through itself 3 times. She's not talking, not even humming, just moving her fingers like the rhythm lives in her bones. You ask what she's making. She says, "A ward." You ask who it's for. She says, "Not you." Then tucks it under the kitchen stairs like it's always belonged there. You see more of them as the days pass. Little bundles of tied string hung behind the pantry door. A strip of red cloth knotted tight around a broom handle. A leather thong twisted into figure 8s and nailed to the windowsill. Some are for protection. Others, not so much. Your cousin shows you a ball of twine in his drawer. It looks normal. Gray, worn, slightly frayed at the edges. But there's something inside it. Something heavier than twine. A knot. Not just tied, but woven. Like someone looped it around a thought and pulled until the thought couldn't leave. He says it's his. He made it the year the sickness came, when his legs wouldn't stop shaking and his jaw locked tight at night. He says the knot kept the fear from spilling. He says, you can trap a thing if you tie it fast enough, but you can't untie it. Not unless you want it back. You start noticing how many things are twisted around here. Not broken, not scattered, just twined. The herbs in the rafters are braided. The dried corn is looped in 3s. Even the rope on the well has a knot halfway down that no one ever touches. You ask why. Your grandmother just says, some things want loose ends. So you don't give them any. You watch your aunt wrap wool around a wooden spoon, knotting it tighter each time your uncle coughs. By sundown, he's silent again. The spoon is buried the next morning. She doesn't speak of it again. You begin tying your laces differently. Not for style, for safety. Left over right. 1 loop tucked, 3 turns. A quick twist at the end. Not a fashion statement. A boundary. Something to tell the world, this is mine. Don't pull on it. You hear stories of a girl whose braids were tied too tight, and when she dreamed, someone else dreamed through her. Of a boy who braided grass for a toy and ended up tangled in someone else's hunger. Of a house where all the knots came undone one morning and everything inside vanished before breakfast. Your cousin says, never untie something if you don't know who tied it. Even if it looks like junk, even if it whispers. Especially if it whispers. There's a drawer in the old chest under the window. It's tied shut with thick twine. No lock, just knots. 6 of them. You've never opened it. You never will. Because one day, your aunt caught you looking at it and simply said, that's not yours to untie. You're starting to understand how many things around you are held together with knots. Not nails, not glue. Belief, intention, memory wrapped tight. Sometimes love is a knot. Sometimes grief is a knot. And sometimes revenge is just a string someone forgot to cut. You check your coat before you hang it. Make sure no one's looped a string through the sleeve. You stop tugging loose threads off strangers. You stop laughing when someone ties a ribbon around a dead mouse and leaves it by the fence. You know what that means now. It's not art. It's not kindness. It's a message. And messages are best left tied. You've stopped untangling things. You leave knots alone. You check your boots twice. You speak softly when you speak at all. The house feels tighter now, drawn in, guarded, like every door is a held breath, like every thread is doing the work of 1,000 prayers. But not everything can be tied down. Not everything wants to be kept out. Some things are already on their way, and they're not coming to hurt you. Not yet. They're just coming to warn you. So tonight, we talk about signs. The kind you never want to see. It begins with the bird. A blackbird. You find it in the yard. Not dead. Waiting. Just sitting, puffed up and still, watching the back door with the kind of stare that makes you want to look away. It doesn't move when you come near. It doesn't blink. And when you speak to it, softly, with your name under your breath, it flies off in the wrong direction. Straight into the wind. Your aunt sees it and doesn't say a word. Just tightens her shawl, grabs a handful of cornmeal, and tosses it into the hearth fire. You ask her what the bird meant. She says, "It wasn't meant for you." But she still draws a cross on the door in ash before sunset. That night, you hear knocking. 3 taps. Slow. Even. From the back door. No one uses the back door. You freeze. Don't answer. Your cousin appears in the hallway. He's pale, holding a lit candle and a string of dried acorns. He whispers, "Don't move." So you don't. The knocking doesn't come again, but you know the rules now. 1 knock is weather. 2 knocks is mischief. 3 knocks, that's warning. And not the kind that asks you to fix it. The kind that tells you something's already in motion. You don't sleep. Next morning, you find salt poured in a circle around the porch. You didn't put it there. Your aunt nods at it. "Good," she says. "It listened." You start to notice the other signs. The candle that won't light on the first match. The door that won't stay shut even after 3 latches. The mirror that shows a crack only when you're alone. All little things. Until they add up. And then they aren't little anymore. They're death signs. Not curses. Not attacks. Just messages. Warnings stitched into the fabric of your day. Sometimes they come in 3s. 3 knocks, 3 birds. 3 broken needles in a row. That's how you know it's close. Your grandmother tells you stories of how people used to hang black cloth over every mirror when someone in the village felt the signs. Not because the dead feared their own reflection, because something else might use it. She says if you hear your name spoken from behind a closed door, don't answer. Even if it's your mother's voice. Even if it's your own. Especially if it's your own. She tells you about a woman who dug up her late husband's boots after dreaming of him 3 nights in a row. She found bones inside, but not his. Your cousin says if a fire goes out 3 times in one night without reason, someone is leaving, not moving away. Leaving, you keep candles now, not for light, for witness, because flames flicker when the air changes, and sometimes they point at what's waiting. There's a graveyard past the creek. You've never been. You're told not to go unless invited. Not by people, by wind, by weather, by signs. If you have to go, you leave something behind. Coins, nails, milk teeth. Something that says you came with empty hands and don't plan on taking anything back. You remember hearing about the old woman who took a wildflower from a grave mound and braided it into her hair. She didn't speak another full sentence after that, just hummed, low and soft, as if she was trying to remember a melody no one had taught her. They say she was fine, healthy, just gone. Eyes blank, mind somewhere else, or someone else's. That's how signs work. They don't chase you, they prepare you. So when your shoelaces snap 3 days in a row, and the weather vane spins against the wind, and your name shows up carved into the bark of a tree you've never touched, don't ask questions. Pack a loaf of bread. Tie red thread around your wrist. Sleep with salt by the bed. And if the knocking comes again, don't get up. It already knows you're home. You've stopped brushing your hair at night. You hang your coat with the buttons facing out. You don't answer knocks, and you definitely don't speak to anyone standing on the porch after dark. Not unless you can see both their eyes, and even then, only if their voice casts a shadow. You've learned to listen to what isn't said, what doesn't creak, what gets too quiet. But signs don't always come loud. Some don't knock. Some just stop, like a ticking that goes still, like a thread that was always there, until suddenly it isn't. Tonight, we're talking about borrowed time, and the old belief that clocks aren't just tools for keeping hours, but for holding souls. It begins with the family clock, big, heavy, carved out of wood that still smells like cedar when it rains. It stands in the hallway, doesn't chime anymore, but it ticks. Always has. Even when it isn't wound. Even when the gears are rusted and the hands are stuck. You ask your grandmother how that's possible. She tells you, it doesn't run on time. It runs on remembrance. You don't know what that means. Not yet. You learn about it slowly. The first time is when your great-uncle dies. Not suddenly, not painfully, just finally. He'd been quiet for a while. One day he went to bed and didn't get back up. That same morning, the clock stops ticking. You don't notice it at first, not until your cousin stops by and walks past it, then backs up. He stares at it, then says, "Who was it?" Not what happened, not why did it stop. Just, who was it? Because here, when the clock stops, it means someone has left. Someone tied to it. Not by chain, not by rope, by time. You ask your aunt if it happens often. She says, only when the hour runs out. You check the clock the next day. It's ticking again. You don't remember anyone winding it. But it ticks, and every tick feels heavier. Not like time passing, more like a rope being pulled tighter. You start noticing the small clocks in the house. One on the shelf in the pantry, one above the sink, one hanging just above the cellar stairs that doesn't show hours, just a crescent of moons painted in faded blue. You ask about that one. Your cousin says, it's not for telling time. You say, then what is it for? He shrugs. It's for counting how many nights we've been safe. That one stops sometimes too. When it does, someone always falls ill. Not with sickness, with silence. They go quiet, start staring too long at nothing. You begin to understand that time here isn't about hours. It's about rhythm, about agreements. Your grandmother tells you every clock in the house was started the day someone was born or died. She says some clocks were never bought, just appeared. A gift from the world to mark the start of something it intends to keep track of. She shows you her pocket watch. Worn brass. The face is cracked. The hands spin the wrong way. You ask why she keeps it. She says it ticks backwards to count what's left instead of what's past. You hear stories of borrowed time, of a man who died and came back after 3 days because the clock by his bed never stopped ticking. His wife swore she saw it stop, then restart on its own. He came back with no memory of where he'd gone, but he wouldn't go near that clock again, wouldn't let it tick in the same room. Had them bury it in a box sealed with nails and milk. They say it still ticks. You think of time differently now. You notice when it skips, when the same minute shows twice, when you wake up feeling like you've been gone longer than a night. You notice when things get too still, like the world is waiting for something to catch up. You start keeping a candle near the hallway clock, just in case it needs company or witness. You ask your cousin what happens if the clock stops and no one notices. He says, then something else does. And you believe him, because time in a house like this isn't a tool. It's a thread, and once it snaps, something always follows it home. The clocks haven't stopped again, not yet. But you check more often now. You light the candle each night. You hum the same 4-note melody your grandmother taught you, under your breath, just in case something's listening and doesn't remember who you are. Because this place doesn't just run on time. It runs on attention. And the next lesson isn't carved in wood or counted in ticks. It grows, quietly, right outside your window. Tonight, we're going to talk about plant omens and why the worst thing a flower can do is bloom when it shouldn't. You're halfway through sweeping the porch when your aunt freezes mid-step. You follow her eyes. It's a wildflower. White, 5 petals, sprouted overnight in the crack between the stairs. She turns around and walks straight back inside. Doesn't touch it. Doesn't speak. Later that day, you find her salting the corners of the front room. You ask what the flower meant. She doesn't look up. Just says, that wasn't supposed to grow. The next morning, the rooster's dead. No marks, no blood. Just stopped. You begin to understand. Plants don't just grow. Sometimes they signal. You're taught the signs fast. If the corn sprouts early, someone's lying. If the beans twist around themselves, someone's hiding something. If the sunflowers bend west at dawn, don't go outside. Your cousin tells you there are flowers that cry, not with tears, but with moisture on leaves when there's no dew. He says you can hear them at night sometimes, whispering in their sleep. He says, if you see a weeping leaf in moonlight, don't touch it. That's someone else's grief. You let it stay, let it finish. The herbs above the hearth aren't just for seasoning. They're guardians, watchers. If one falls without wind, that's a warning. If 2 fall, something's already here. You hear about the night a row of rosemary bundles dropped all at once. No storm, no shaking, just fell like something invisible brushed past. That same night, the family next door moved out without a word. Didn't even take the dog. You ask your grandmother what she thinks happened. She says, the plants warned them. They listened. You start watching the weeds. They grow fast near places that feel strange. At the back corner of the shed, the grass refuses to stay cut, grows in spirals. Tangled. You try to mow it once. The blade breaks. Your cousin calls it witch's breath, says the ground's holding something and doesn't want to be disturbed. You never try again. Some plants are kept indoors, not for health, not for luck, but to catch things. Spider plants, ivy, lemon balm, all good trappers. They catch whispers, intentions, dreams that leak out of your ears when you sleep. You're told to watch the roots. If they pull away from the pot, pull up like they're trying to escape, you move the bed. You don't ask why. You don't want to know what it caught. There's a bleeding heart flower that's been growing outside your window since before you were born. No one planted it. No one touches it. It never dies. Only blooms in the dead of winter. You once asked why. Your uncle said, "That's not a flower, that's a door." You asked, "To where?" He just said, "Know where you want to go." The soil in this place remembers. It gives back what you forget. Buried rage, lost names, old deals. Sometimes something sprouts that shouldn't. A seed you didn't plant. A color no one has words for. You don't pull it. You circle it with chalk. You whisper at it, and you wait. If it withers fast, you're lucky. If it doesn't, if it starts to lean toward the house, like it's listening, you move. You don't warn your neighbors. They'll figure it out, or they won't. But the earth will speak either way. You sleep now with mint at the windows, chamomile under the bed, salt in the corners, and clover in your shoes. Because when the plants start talking, they're not giving advice, they're announcing, and you don't want to be surprised by who's listening.